The Islamic capitalist dome versus the Temple of Israel. Since the people have not turned back to their Hebrew roots, such as Denmark, as descent of Israel, the Elohim of our nation's security and safety, not the capitalist economy, the abomination. President, not mine though. Obama directs the eyes of the people towards nor the rivers of resin, symbolic for Obama himself, joined to the Islamic Brotherhood of Syria, that overthrew Lebanon and Gaza, and at present writing Libya, and his stand against the presidents voicing the rebels' cause, and Ramallah's son, symbolic for the present Democratic national mother of Bill Clinton's following, that won over the lewd nation by a lewd conduct of oral compilation with his secretary, becoming the cool and new age president that the cheating, disorderly youth could appeal to, rather than the waters of Sheol, at least the Mormon president nominee that would have linked us all back to our Hebrew roots, as in the purpose of religion, or McCain that would have fought off our enemies. So that Obama has taken us back to Egypt by proclamation of his administration to put an Islamic dome, stronghold, at ground zero, symbolizing the defeat of our war on terror by those who struck us in the manner of false religion. Vatican Protestant Chrislam, placing a holy shrine in the spirit at the center of our wound. Though the dome hasn't been built physically, it still stands as a Prince of Persia, new Islamic base of America, and muzzles our holy sites like the dome at the east end of Jerusalem muzzles the holy sites of King David, and prevents lasting peace by a Palestine spirit to make it permanent, being a thorn in the side of Israel and Paul, Messianic leader for that sense. When our Constitution was written based on the 10 Commandments of Christianity, Messiah, Ik-anity, Messianity, freedom of religion. This is injustice. He who now comes against ours and our allies' strongholds for the enemy. Daniel 11:36-38. To say that freedom is put so high on a pedestal in the New Age America that it allows Islam who chants anti-Americanism, anti-Messianicism amongst the United Nations with open ears aggressively ready to get rid of Western civilization policy. From off the world's superpower dominating table is to say, to put bonds of slavery upon our people that enrages our Elohim and in effect stands erect as a pagan victory prize to our enemies that we have been conquered already by a foreign nation in our effects to defend ourselves as a nation of great sovereignty. And by who? Isolated Iran, who funds these terrorist organizations and who has manipulated their nearest of kinsmen in Iraq under Saddam Hussein. To do their dirty work despite their faction disagreements, they have always remained as a united Islamic republic in the face of their common enemies. Yet I don't see at least the loyalty in Democrats to our republic. They have more of a Roman Islamic loyalty to the Eastern rebels than us Republicans, Gaddafians, Gaddafi troops, and Mubarkans, Mubarak troops. Just as France gave us the Statue of Liberty, a memorial of Estar, a star, and Isis, pagan Mother Earth deities, back to Egypt, as a war victory president at the close of the World War of post-World Wars. So Obama responds to the call of pagan entity initiative from the golden city of black arts, Nostradamus foretelling and announcing of the new world order, only as a pagan dedication to the pagan world to come. To add more injustice to the matter, as I am now pressing the final master copy, a large statue of MLK was just unveiled on August 22nd. Photos prophecy will be provided in further chapter studies to reflect this in the maze of prophecy, timely and orderly in this book, explaining all mysteries of past and further mysteries. What we see is a photo of the Martin Luther King statue. Rather than a set-apart people of Elohim, he has risen up to destroy our last bit of segregation. even by the help of our own people, joined to him by a covenant of flatteries, Daniel 11:32, to be a pure race and culture set aside to ourselves, away from the pagan world that seeks to control us through their true culprits of racism abuse. For racism is not a crime against humanity, no more than having the national pride to defend ourselves in our nation built on a superior race that had shared its set-apart existence with all who dwelt with us before those segregation rights were taken away, so that we may pollute and abuse each other with heavy, glorified mingling and mixing propaganda shows, which has nothing to do with our brotherly love. One said, 40 years ago, interracial marriage was kinda taboo, T-A-B-O-O. Taboo, T-A-B-U. Or tabal, T-U-B-A-L, equals nations help but with evil intent, or uncool, or now is cool, by a taboo, or tabal report. This is mere liberal crap. There has been a point in past history of America we have strayed from, and to say don't return home to the ways of old, but embrace this new way means that your marriage will be of a traitorship in a general light more than a personal. Why don't you all just keep your mouths shut like the rest of the humble international couples of marriage and stop preaching your hanging on the coattails of interracial marriage to preach a new mixed government, away from our forefathers onto Latin Rome, even confusing our white track star men to join in this evil way of propaganda films, not for the sake of mixed marriage, but for the sake of a new Roman government you call upon us, of another culture, as some have made it, for each race in their own homelands don't partake or widely condone interracial marriage, so as to preserve their own race. Separatist versus Unitarianism. Brotherly love. I recall the Philadelphian city flash bomb protest after the London riots, that though they think they are rich with flash bombs, a common anti-riot police measure for their previous bottled flamethrowers, they are poor with Laodicean spirits, in this sense, Black Panther spirits, because of how and for whom they peace marched, thinking the Philadelphian city of brotherly love makes them of the Philadelphian church. They are sadly mistaken and need eye saliva for their eyes. If Yahshua Messiah, a white man, walked up to a black man that day and said, "Let me spit on my hand and rub it in your eye with mud so you can see," being truly blind, you would feel disrespected. You can't take the image of the police department on unless you are going to defend our Constitution against black hatred groups, trying to start riots because they can't fit in with our race, though we sought to help them. Of neighbors is to ensure each has a right, without the other taking advantage of the other, crossing racial boundaries put in place by Elohim. I see a tail by the riot guard's helmet, and a head of some shoulders perking over the photographer in the background of fire. We have a picture of the city of Philadelphian peace march of flash bombs, and a picture of the London riots with a black man holding a phone taking a picture of a riot guard with fire in the background of a fiery figure. In the first photo, we see a fist with the face of fire being coming out of the flames with a roar, like the BP explosion face with what may be two horns on this one. We see two more photos of the London riots. The first one is a long street with what seems to be some rubble lit on fire. With a fist of fire coming up from the rubble, we see a face with two horns, eyes, and a roaring mouth. In the second photo, we see a corner house lit on fire with riot police clearing the premise. When one crosses these lines, naturally there are wars of confusion of oneself. How come the black community didn't march the streets when Norway was bombed by the Vatican? And that will explain whose side you really are on. Why does it always seem that you protest against us and not with us? You say Yahweh's way is not fair, but it is your way that is not fair. If you see my collective protest, you see that it is not one-sided at all. I prophesy against my own people and foreign nations strongly, just as much as I do you, because I wear a belt of truth, though I hide it near the Euphrates River and dig it up to see if it's ruined, as is people's flash bombs, or have not you still haven't changed for the better. And I still let my scriptures do thy judging of my mouth, like justice, light going forth from me, neither putting out a flame nor crushing a wick. Thus naturally, if one race has a constitution formed by another particular religion of their country that dominates all other races that travel there, must only openly worship by the dominant constitution this form of freedom of religion, but if in conflict, worship their foreign gods in the comforts of their own homes, knowing if they are caught, they shall be banished as a threat to the safety and security of their new heartland, or moral traveled, to be engrafted, or visitors only. Thus we have been compromised. We are in revolution, and strangers eat up our land not knowing any better, and we are condemned as racists whenever we try to fix a problem with any strong hand. When Rachel cries for her lost children, we see a picture of two women, a blonde-haired woman and a red-haired gal, crying for the Norway bombing and the loss of many there and much bloodshed. Not to differentiate any of these, but how do you tell the difference? We see 4 more photos. A picture of the Norway bomber in a car, in a heavily guarded car with a prison guard. Then we see a white Templar knight in a long hallway of medieval structure. Then we see a picture of Attorney General Eric Holders, who has been addressing the immigration policies of closing down the borders and calling it racist. The 4th picture is a picture of President Obama in a priest gown addressing assembly at a church. These pictures of the Vatican Jesuits mean nothing to my Anglo-Saxon's blood spilled. Bombing the Islamic community was just a cover-up to my people he targeted out to pierce the United Kingdom. See pictures of Norway explosion up close and in person. Some mistaken the Hitler-Nazi core philosophy to be separatist, but in fact they are only separatists against the Messianic Israelites. They collect all else under their wing when they rise up to defeat their centuries-old enemy, separated at the Battle of Denmark. Shem Anglo-White Saxons separated from Shem Anglo-White Assyrians that became modern-day Germany. The common belief that racism has to be with remaining separate over gathering all as one is incorrect. With the witness of the Tower of Babel to 2,000 years through 2,500 years BC, located near what was to be their future city, Nineveh, Assyria. This makes me recall their 50th anniversary in the building of the Berlin Wall Memorial, the site and city to be of the foundation of the Fourth Reich. To say that such a division of modern war still exists 3,500 years later is not foolishness, but quite the contrary, for history repeats, is self-intensified by its oldest elements. Language, religion, and culture are still the underlying factors to this immense threat. Science that attempts to evade this merging away from mythology and theology, so as not to give the belief in Elohim the ability, the power over the future according to the higher education standards, to dictate politics as some third world country, supposed to be civilized past the reaches of the barbarian ages, is pure ignorance. May I add, no disrespect to the colored man, but for this reason, whites who were called racist because of the color of another's skin were rightly called niggers individually. This somehow became the title of all African Americans of the progressing period, who even learned to flip the racial slur on the name givers, who like the slaves began to lose a true definition of racism and apply it to one's color of the culture rather than individually. Like it or not, race, not color, for racism has nothing to do with one's color. Only those who make it an issue are then defining themselves as racial haters by means of color blindness, figuratively speaking. And religious systems are the main factors of war and therefore must be monitored by any Messianic believers who are watching the signs of the end of days, quite contrary to what our culture defines freedom, lifting the racial barriers. This, in effect, has become the basis of false religion and politics in the United States, mirroring the world who only looks outside looking in rather than inside looking out, or both interchangeably. For someone to say being a separatist is an unconstitutional right is quite the contrary. For to say such a thing would be to call Christianity a Messianican, the backbone of our Constitution, a lie, for Messiah believers come out of the world to remain separate in their congregations based on the values of a race, a white race called Israel, having become the church, a nation in spirit, engrafted into the cultivated olive tree, not to be unevenly yoked to. At this time, we offer another piece of literature to you. It's called Ezekiel, the End-Time Prophet by Gerald Fleury. The first wave of smoke, heavenly and earthly signs of Yahweh's rebuking curse, coming upon the land on 9/11/2001. What we have is a collection of 13 pictures of the 9/11 Twin Towers collapse when the Islamic terrorists crashed their planes into the Twin Towers. 9 of these pictures have to do with the faces that were seen in the Twin Tower fire. Another 4 of these pictures is the origami folding of United States currency that shows pictures of these Twin Towers already pre-burnt, according to the conspiracy theories of what was expected of the Nostradamus fire tower terror card. These signs were borne witness of mainly by mainstream secular Christianity. A great multitude without number washes in the blood of the Lamb after the great tribulation is complete, in the time of the blowing of the 7th trumpet. The blowing of trumpets announces the 7 bowls of wrath were complete, after the trumpets, seals, thunders have been accomplished. We will have witnessed the rolling up of the heavens and earth in all its expansive power, principalities, decrees, and dominions. These are those who are only washed in the blood of the Lamb, having made it out with their lives, coming out of the great tribulation with robes of white instead of scarlet, to be kings and priests in the kingdom of Elohim anew, fleshly and mortally, to help the resurrected saints in the spirit projection of flesh, in the first fruits, spiritual resurrection, just barely missing the first resurrection. Thus the next wave of signs understood with the same, but with exceeding respect for the cause, regardless if man's computers manipulate the message warfare, still will be the mighty hand of Yahweh being stretched out in his tools as hatchets, whom the lumberjack uses, and the clay cannot boast, "Why did you make me so?" Those who have enough means to provide such a high and lowly cost conspiracy theories framework must have a story to tell, and an important one, being the greatest men on earth in power, like the ancient Nephilim. And we can be sure that they will deliberately spark a World War III, that they will lose power over to contain costly, the fleshly equivalent of the 24 elders, to each individually lay their crowns before the all-powerful King of all creation by prophecy. And thus every knee shall bow and confess Yahshua as the Messiah of all the earth, coming in the clouds for the first 1,000 years of peace in Yahweh's kingdom, when he too will come down and dwell with man, with no need of a temple of worship, for we shall be as he, as Yahshua is, and we shall be his people. He is our Father, and he is our Savior, and we shall be as they, our fathers and saviors and Elohim, together sharing all things. This is the free gift of salvation. The reward comes with the next wave of heavenly and earthly signs. Why come this far and not go the extra length to attain the first resurrection with the forever reward, on grounds that we are required to, because when someone like a Roman knight asks you to run 1 mile with them, you run on the true white horse of righteousness, too, with a double-edged sword coming out your mouth.